Hey everyone, it's David Sirota with an update on some of our reporting on the airline situation and the furor over United Airlines video showing that passenger being thrown off the plane. A lot of people have asked why passenger Bill of Rights legislation has not been successful in Congress in recent years or in state legislatures. The answer, in part, has to do with lobbying and campaign contributions. I'm sure many of you won't be surprised to know that United Airlines has been a huge giver of campaign contributions and has spent extensively on lobbying. International Business Times and Maplight ran some of the numbers and found that United has spent more than $41 million on lobbying over the last decade at just the federal level. That doesn't even include the state level. Since 2012, it has given more than $2.4 million in federal campaign contributions. So this is an industry and a company that has spent a lot of money, and we looked at lobbying records that showed that as it was spending that money, it was specifically lobbying on bills that dealt with passenger rights. United has lobbied against bills dealing with fee transparency. It has lobbied on bills that deal with minimum seat size requirements. You may notice that when you get on a lot of planes, the seats are actually physically getting smaller. There was legislation, Democratic legislation, to mandate minimum size seats. United lobbying records show lobbied on that particular piece of legislation, and it died in committee. There was legislation dealing with what Democratic senators called unreasonable fees. There was one airline, a separate airline, had proposed potentially charging fees for using an airline's bathroom on the plane, and Senator Ed Markey put a bill in to try to deal with unreasonable fees. That's what the bill called them. United lobbied on that bill, and the bill again died. So there's a series of bills that have died in Congress about passenger rights that United has lobbied on, and the airline industry in general has lobbied on, and those bills have died. United actually recently notched a big victory through its lobby group. It's got this trade association where all the airlines work together. That lobby group went to the Trump administration very recently in January and asked the Trump administration to delay proposed Obama-era rules that would force more and better disclosure of the fees that are charged to airline customers. Days after that lobby group sent a letter to Trump asking him for that delay, the Trump administration did in fact issue that delay. So those rules are on ice for now. So it's important to understand how big a presence on Capitol Hill the airline industry has. And it's not just on Capitol Hill. Remember about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, there was a lot of those tarmac delays, and we're getting, I guess, reused to them again. A lot of states considered a passenger Bill of Rights back then as well. New York, California, Rhode Island, Connecticut, many others. New York actually passed one. United was involved in some of the lobbying on those bills. In California, the bill made it through the Assembly, a passenger Bill of Rights dealing with punishments for airlines that have these huge delays. United lobbied on that bill. The bill did not make it out of the legislature. It never was enacted. So this has been a broad and big campaign. And United, by the way, had spent at the state and local level in recent years $1 million on state politics. So this is an industry that has a huge amount of political power using money, campaign contributions, and lobbying. The dynamic, though, may have changed. I interviewed today for International Business Times Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland, who said that he is going to be introducing legislation that would aim to prohibit airlines from forcibly removing passengers from planes when they have already boarded. I mean, I know some of us would say it's kind of insane that a piece of legislation has to be offered for that. But Van Hollen is putting that bill in, and he says that the video that came out from the United passenger may have changed the game in terms of the airline's political power, that it's such a powerful video that it's going to be hard for lawmakers to stand against a bill that says you can't be forcibly dragged off a plane. Now, Van Hollen makes a really interesting point about the economic dynamics and incentives about being forcibly removed. He notes that in 2008, rules were put in place to cap the amount that an airline can pay you if it forcibly drags you off a plane. Under federal rules, if you can believe this, an airline can only pay you $1,350 if they forcibly drag you off a plane. That's right, the federal government put a limit on how much you can be compensated if you are physically dragged off a plane. And Van Hollen says, that basically creates a financial incentive for the airlines to drag you off a plane. If they, when they try to bump you, they offer you, $200, $500, $600. Well, once they get to $1,350, they have a financial incentive to drag you off the plane and not ask you to volunteer. So Van Hollen's bill, he says, will try to change the economic incentives on this and say, look, if you've overbooked, if you've oversold a plane, you, the airline, that's up to you to use the free market, to use economic incentives to get people to voluntarily leave the plane. And you should not be able to drag people off a plane, and you certainly shouldn't be financially incentivized to drag people off a plane. We'll be watching what happens with that legislation and whether that video has changed the dynamic on Capitol Hill.